very good evening to you and welcome to Big Talk here on Global Television. My name is Godwin Sunday. One day, just one day after the democracy celebration of Nigeria, where a lot of conversation have tended to spring up. First is a conversation around the fact that a lot of processes that goes on in Lagos State Electoral Commission and of course the local government election has been marred with a lot of irregularities. The Labour Party and the PDP, which is the People's Democratic Party, have come out to complain about some of these irregularities that has marred the entire process. For them, they feel like this process is to favor the All Progressive Congress. But then, that's just one conversation by the side. This is all about the big talks. Then again, we have the conversation around the entire process of the Democracy Day, which has been also a celebration that is supposed to be celebrated across the Federation, with different tiers of government expressing their thoughts, their beliefs, and of course, their entire mindset around democratical ethos and processes. But then, there is one challenge that we have even in celebration of Democracy Day, and this is the fact that democracy celebration right now tend to be hinged around the fact that this is centered around the presidency, even talking about the president around Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration, which has tend to look at this whole process from the old federal angle on the federal tier of government, and the subnationals have refused to even want to delve into all of this conversation. Well, I wish we can have time to even look at all of this, but then I'm being joined right now to talk about some of these issues and practical demonstrations of democracy and by a member who have served even in this constituency. But then, let's not even forget that the third part of the conversation resides around the fact that we have the World Labor Day, and the children are celebrating the Labor Day, but there's this conversation that delves around the children not being able to, children are being exploited and being brought into the labor framework without adequate consideration. But let's look at all of this conversation this evening and see how we can even bring about adequate balance in all of this. Well, my name is Godwin Sunday. Don't forget that you can join the conversation on our various social media handle currently showing on your screen. Now let's begin to delve into the conversation, but I won't want to delve into the conversation right now because of because we have a guest that is already standing by. So I'll allow the guests to come in and even look at all of this indices that has formed the whole political process, the labor constituency, and then we'll be able to create a balance around this area. Don't forget, my name is Godwin Sunday, and I'll be back after this short break. Please stay with me. welcome back. So let's even delve into the conversation. But right now, I'm being joined by the former member of the House of Representatives representing Langtang North and South Federal Constituency in the Plateau State, and no other than Honorable Benila La. And we're talking about the state of the nation assessing the 2025 World Day Against Child Labor. Let's even look at all of this conversation. But first, let me welcome you to the conversation. You're welcome to.
Thank you.
To Big Talk.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a real privilege to have Benny Lala to join you on a conversation of this magnitude, because such a breed, like we will say, are rare to find. But then, when you look at the child labor across Nigeria and trying to assess the various Child Rights Act and other acts that have been created to formally regularize and formally project the rights of children in Nigeria. What do you make of all of this development right now in practice, not in theory?
Thank you very much, Godwin, for having me on this program. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. First of all, it has been an honor for me to have been elected into the House of Representatives 5 times. I think in the whole country, only 2 women have had this honor. Honorable Khadija Bukar Ibrahim and myself, Honorable Benilar. I was elected first in 2007, and I was appointed the chair of the House Committee on Women's Rights. So that put me in a position to legislate and also help formulate policies for women and children. In the 7th Assembly, I was chair of the Human Rights Committee, which directly dealt with issues of trafficking, human trafficking. And the agency, of course, created by the legislature in 2003, the Anti-Trafficking Act that prohibits trafficking in persons, was amended when I was chair of that committee in 2015. Nigeria has had a huge challenge because mainly I think because of our huge population, and most of the population are children and youth under the age of 25. So you see right there we have a huge population. That means we are supposed to put, have certain measures in place to protect the children. The Constitution of the Federal Republic does that. As you know, the basic fundamental rights of all Nigerian citizens are mentioned in the Constitution, and the Constitution defines a child as being one who is the age of 18, and so does the Child Rights Act. A child is one who is, any person under the age of 18 is considered a child. However, in the Constitution it says, unless you are a person who has married, although you haven't attained this age. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy. But however, under international law and convention, a child is one who is regarded as a person who is under the age of 18, as in the African Charter for Children's Rights. So what I particularly find intriguing is that Nigeria has done very well in keeping to these conventions. We have all the agencies required by law. International Convention demands that we have an agency to, to protect children from trafficking and exploitation, and we have the National Agency on the Prohibition of Trafficking Against Persons, which prohibits sexual abuse, exploitation, and child labor of any form. Child labor, be it forced labor or voluntary labor, is defined in many instances in the Child Rights Act and in various legislations. Now, the issue is, you asked me a question, what practically is happening in Nigeria? In Nigeria, as you see, we have a lot of growth in the agricultural sector. So there is different forms of trafficking and labor exploitation. 2 of them sort of go hand in hand, because trafficking is defined as either removing a person from his environment, a child in this instance, from his or her environment and forcing them either into prostitution or into labor, and then, of course, not even giving them the wages or remuneration that one is expected to give. So in most cases, you find that children who are engaged in, who are exploited as children, be it sexually or otherwise, they're not even remunerated. And the human dignity, the Constitution guarantees the right to human dignity, and that they're debased, that dignity is taken away from them, and that is against the law, and it's made punishable. So there are strict offenses, and what we did, remember when I chaired that committee, I made the amendment in 2015, was to stiffen the penalties prescribed for traffickers. In the past, a trafficker could get away with a fine of 50,000 naira, even with no jail term. But now, the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons is mandatory for them to prosecute. They have the powers to prosecute offenders, and the law, they can prosecute them. They have they can investigate, and they can prosecute them. And the law stipulates very stiff penalties, some of them even running into life sentences, but penalties of not less than 14 years and up. Now, the thing about it is that in spite of this, you still find trafficking growing. Children are still removed from their homes. Parents, guardians, and neighbors, some of them are involved in selling their children for cheap labor. Promises of a good job, promises to take them abroad, promises to give them a better life. I mean, a child who is in your care under 18 is supposed to be in school. I think Nigerians should have the awareness that it is against the law for you, even as a neighbor that knows that trafficking is going on and you do not report it. You are even guilty of a crime. If you know that your neighbor is selling a child or going around doing so, it's also criminal conspiracy. So we must come together as a nation to fight this ugly surge and ugly crime that is destroying the future of our children. You cannot have children who will excel in innovation, ideas, who will be the leaders of the future. A generation that is enslaved cannot lead this nation to the promised land. And Nigeria wants to compete with global nations. But trafficking and child exploitation and labor is one of the big obstacles that we face in achieving this target for our children. I want to commend President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I like his Renewed Hope Initiatives program of wanting to ensure that Nigeria competes with the global economy. However, there are obstacles. And one of these obstacles, child exploitation, is an economic obstacle that not only debases the human mind, from when you're a child, and we have a huge population of children. And I can tell you that the International Labour Organization released a very worrying report on Nigeria. And in that report, they said that in spite of Nigeria's commitment to eliminating the worst forms of child labor exploitation in child labor, Nigeria hasn't done much. So I want us, and I want the nation, and especially those of us who believe in the Renewed Hope Initiative, to revisit the country as a whole, not just the agencies in charge, but trafficking, all of us, trafficking is the responsibility of every Nigerian to ensure that it's curbed, because it happens in the environment and in the community. A child is trafficked, somebody definitely knows that child is trafficked, apart from the offender. So the offenders must be brought to book, and I'm glad NAPTIP is doing somewhat their best, but they're not doing enough, because I know they don't have enough funding. But more must be done by the various states and the local governments. You cannot depend on NAPTIP in Abuja to rescue a trafficked child in Langtang, or to rescue a trafficked child in Kaduna, or a trafficked child in Benue State, or in Edo State, or Lagos. We have trafficking everywhere in this country, and we must come up with a holistic approach to it, and that is yet to be done.
Well, that was quite educative, and of course, we will say that it's not just educative, it's more enlightening. But then let's even talk about all of this child labor in Nigeria. You've mentioned correctly the issues around getting a child to get married across the country and trying to look at all of this conversation. But then, we look at, there is a lacuna even in Nigerian constitution that talks about the fact that a child can get married even in its early age. But I want to even find out from you, when enacting that law, can we say that that also is to support, because what one thing about marriage is that when you get married, you are to support your family. Then there's a particular section in Nigerian Constitution, section 29, subsection 4 of Nigerian Constitution, which gives rights to the age of marriage. And marriageable age in that Constitution talks about that you must be 18 years and above. Now that 18 years and above talks about you must be the age of maturity. Now in particular part of the country, this doesn't sit well with even legislative officers when we talk about 18 years and above. We'll look at this is the origin of child trafficking and labor abuse in Nigeria. Can we even talk about this? What is the government even doing in this regard in terms of amending this section of the Constitution, section 29, subsection 4 of, particular about the subsection 4B of that Constitution, of the Constitution right now?
Okay, first of all, that has been a very thorny issue because we had a technical committee when we made the amendment, and we realized that the Constitution, certain parts needed to be amended. However, objections were raised at that time. And some of the objections were that in some cultures, it's okay for a child to be married before 18. And if you look at the passage of the Child Rights Act, 35 out of 36 states have passed it. But some of the states that passed the Child Rights Act did not stipulate or mention what the age of marriage is. So in some cultures, the age of marriage depends on, other factors. And sometimes in Nigeria, certain things we have to look into at a more of a local level because different things apply in different, that's one of the thorny issues that we're still facing today. So unfortunately, we're a country that is mixed, different faiths, different religion, different traditions, and you cannot have a one-size-fits-it-all in Nigeria. This is Nigeria. However, when it comes to the age of marriage, it is advisable that it is 18. And I think that's what the Constitution is trying to say. It's making it advisable. So that's why it's not, when it comes to marriage. But I wouldn't want to go into, I wouldn't want to say more than what I've said. But the Child Rights Act has been passed in 35 out of 36 states. It's just one more state. But it's not enough that laws are passed. I think the enforcement of these laws through the attitudes of the citizens is more important. Children must be protected. And that was why when I was in the 8th Assembly, I did propose the Child Rights Act, the Child Protection Agency be formed, the Child Protection and Enforcement Agency. And I did propose that because it's important for children to have an agency that will protect them and their rights, regardless of what the nation believes that those rights are. But children need a special agency, just as we have an agency protecting traffickers, which is the National Agency of the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons. Nigeria needs to come up with its own it's long overdue, because if you go to many countries, even in Africa, we have child protection agencies. Even some states have started doing that. And I'm proud of Niger State. Niger State has a child protection agency. And I'm aware that they do. Niger State seems to be a model for women and children. And I think even the north of Nigeria should take an example from Niger State.
Honorable Benny, let's even talk in terms of this whole child labor. It tends to be more of a sectional activity other than just being a regional activity. when we look at the issues that's happening around the northern part of Nigeria, we say that child labor is not worrisome. These laws tend to be a law that is created and probably implemented for, or probably as a prospect to be implemented around for people in the southern part of Nigeria, because the northern part of Nigeria tend to be a normal trend where a child can get up in the morning and decide to want to assist his parents in order to create, make ends meet for the parents in this regard. When we look at all of this, how do we begin to amalgamate some of these laws in order to create some form of correlation to have a unified system of labor laws, especially what it has to do with the children in Nigeria in this regards?
I think, first of all, that's a very valid point you're making. First of all, the first thing we should look at is the issue of poverty. I'm not justifying anything, but in the north there's a higher rate. There are higher rates of poverty in the north, and there's also larger populations of children in the north. And so because of that, we need to find a situation where children can go to school. Definitely no child should be on the streets. No child of school age should be on the streets, and the Child Rights Act makes it very clear. It's illegal to keep a child who is of school age out of school if the child is in your care. So first we need to ensure that the children are in school. Now, after school, if they want to assist their parents in somewhat, if it's your parent, I'm just giving an example. Let's say my mother sells groundnut in the market, and definitely my mother should keep me at home to do my studies and to do my homework. My mother shouldn't make me come to sit in that market with her. She should be working for me to go to school. And I'm sure that's the wish of every parent. And I'm sure every parent does that. Because I see Nigerian parents, how our former president said, good luck, Jonathan. He said he didn't have any shoes, but he went to school. And I'm sure it was his parents that said, look, I mean, I didn't have the opportunity, but I want my children to have that opportunity. And he became the president of Nigeria. So I think the mindset is very important, that parents all over the country should see the priority. Going to school and keeping their children educated at that school age is an investment for the nation. Sometimes what we need is more awareness. The laws sometimes are in place, but some people may not be adhering to the laws because of other issues that they may be engrossed with or challenges they face that you and I may not face. So it's the mindset that we have to educate and enlighten Nigerians all over, that they need to get their children educated. And that's why I don't want to say this, but I want to say some children in Nigeria who sometimes are neglected and marginalized, if you give them that same opportunity, I don't believe anybody is marginalized, but when I was in the house and people would stand up and say, I represent the marginalized people of so and so. But I never refer to my constituency as marginalized because I don't want to come from that angle of disadvantage. Nobody in Nigeria is disadvantaged. We have a lovely country and we have equal opportunities, and the Constitution guarantees that. So every child should have that equal opportunity, right to education, right to good health, right to protection and safety, and a right to freedom of association, and a right to development and growth. So that shouldn't be impeded by society.
Honorable Bani, there is one conversation that we've never had on the media, and that is a conversation about you being at the forefront of championing the cause of the child rights.
Yes.
Of course, we've seen you in the National Assembly. You've pushed always for the child to be at the forefront. We've seen you even behind the scene. You've never been ashamed of championing the cause of child rights. I want to even throw this personally to you. Is this a personal issue to you? Have you ever been in that state where you've been deprived as a person from being from exhibiting. I don't know session I've been able to take this up with you, but then let's even get you to talk about this on state of the nation right now.
Okay.
Let's get the true state of this. Is this a personal conversation for you to push forward for Nigerian child to be educated, to be also not getting married at the early age, for even talking about the issues around early labor and of course disabusing the act of early labor? Is this a personal thing for you?
Well, first of all, I thank you for that question. And yes, it is a very personal thing for me. Because when I first contested for my elections in 2003 to come into the House of Reps, I think out of all Nigerian women, I've contested for 6 elections. I'm not sure, and then by the grace of God, I won 5. Now, the first time I contested in 2003, my champions and the people who, my greatest fans, and who would, would shout my name in the streets and say, oh, they just love me and I love them. Children make me happy from seeing me visit their communities and throwing children's parties for them and visiting them. I became their friend. And so as I would drive down, children in my constituency would sing songs, and they would, as I would walk with them.
Of the mother of 1 million children.
Yes, so I became so used to it. So that would give me joy. And sometimes I just go visit my constituency just because of the children. Not because of the adults are there, but the children, they're innocent and they're loving. And so I'm like, no. I didn't like the state of some of the children I saw at the time. And so I started to help, and in education, I did a lot in building of classrooms. Most of my constituency projects were in building classrooms, and I was able to influence almost about 30 to 40 classroom blocks in 2 constituencies, minus other, supporting others that already existed. So, and then scholarships. I did a lot of scholarships as well, and visiting schools and providing them with notebooks and school materials, and in healthcare. So when you have a healthy society where the children are healthy and happy, you know that society is going to progress. We have a society where the children are abused, they're exploited. I feel I come from a constituency right now where the story has changed. The children are no longer as happy and running after me as they used to when I started my political journey. Now you hear that many of them are transported in buses to the southwest, to far parts of the north. And I don't know why particularly to the southwest, until I discovered that there were plantations there. And some of them were taken to farm. And some were exported out of the country, the girls. And it broke my heart, because most of them were from even families that I knew. And I'm like, why would you even let your child go? And they said they promised they were going to put them in school. They promised them better jobs. And so in my constituency, we've been going around with the deputy chairman of my constituency and other places to tell women, don't let your child go anywhere. Keep your child at home. If the issue is school fees, the local government has said they will pay the school fees. But I believe that children are a precious gift. Every child is precious. And I think we should do whatever we can to protect them. And when I chaired the Committee on Human Rights, we were at the Geneva Convention every year to give a report on Nigeria. And one of the things they do is to give a report. You have to give the report on the status of your children. There was a year that Nigeria was ranked by the U.S. State Department as having done, they gave us a grade A for our efforts in fighting trafficking. I think that was in 2017 or 18. 18, after we amended the act, because we had done so much. And trafficking was at probably one of its lowest peak. But now trafficking has reared its ugly head. And a lot of Nigerians, especially minors under 18, find them in Ghana, find them in Ivory Coast, find them in Mali, find them in Libya, under 18, children trafficked.
You forgot to even mention in Nigeria Republic.
Niger, neighbors.
But I'm asking at this point, have you ever had an experience where you were also or even in the...
I have never. I am so thankful to God. I've been blessed. My family, and I have been very blessed. I've never had a direct experience or anybody in my immediate home having a threat of trafficking, but I felt it for other mothers. I'm a mother and many other people, and that's why I'm thinking that very soon, maybe by the end of this year, we want to start a movement, Mothers Against Trafficking. That will be coming up very soon in Nigeria. We're looking towards starting that to raise awareness and to support other mothers to keep their children home. Keep your child home. Keep track of what the child is doing.
All right. So as we begin to talk about the World Day Against Child Labor, most mothers will say that Benila has come again with our own wahala, like the narrative goes, that she always want to disturb us. We want to see our children travel abroad. We want to see our children make progress, make ends meet. But then she has come with her own wahala again. Because I've listened to most parents talk about your antecedents of trying to rescue their children, which they believe for them it's to be some form of a prosperity trajectory for their family in order for them to move up and escape the poverty or scale in the country. But then when you come up with your own policy and say, don't traffic your child, don't move your child up even to other countries, let them grow in Nigeria and let them even support the Nigerian government and follow through the Nigerian system. I'm curious at this point to even ask, when you look at the entire Nigerian structure right now as it is, even as we talk about the Independence Day celebration, is it worth the waiting for a child to even stay back in Nigeria to want to talk about sacrificing their future, as it were, for most parents in order to move their prosperity forward?
First and foremost, a child under 18 is not capable of making those decisions. So it's very clear from what you're saying that part of the problem is the parents and the thinking and the attitude and the perception.
Benila come again.
No, that the nation has this policy. And yes, it's a bill and a law that I have passed. I mean, I sponsored the anti-trafficking bill. The amendment in 2018 was sponsored by me, in 2015, sorry. In 2003, the original bill was sponsored by Honorable Florence Aya from Kaduna State. I wasn't in the assembly then. Now, the thing about it is that, you see, trafficking is debasement. It's inhuman treatment. Trafficked victims, I call them victims, they are not treated nicely. These children are either forced into prostitution, and you cannot tell me that you're enjoying the money from your child either being forced into prostitution or slavery. Or when they go to work even on some plantations, of the boys go to forced labor, you find out that even the monies that are given, they live in deplorable situations. They live in houses, they don't eat. They live in tiny rooms and cells. They keep them like where they keep animals. I think what you need to do is go, if these parents visit where their children are, they would tell their children to come back. They would not allow it because they themselves would not be able to stay there. It's because they've not visited. And that was why the former vice president, wife of the vice president, Mrs. Atiku Abubakar, she went to Rome and saw it and decided to start Wycliffe. And she opened that center, and I've supported her and supported every activity she's been doing. Because when you see for yourself, you will feel your heart, you have this heartache. She said, no, Nigeria doesn't deserve this. Nigerians should go out as good ambassadors. And that's why embassies of Italy and EU have been concerned that, Nigerians, do you know that your citizens are here in slavery? What are you doing about it? So our parents shouldn't sit here and have a wrong perception because they've been sold a wrong perception, or they're being sent peanuts when their children are being debased and their children are being treated with inhuman treatments that nobody would want that on himself, much less on his child. And most times the proceeds of crime don't go to them. It's those that pimped them, or the traffickers, it's the middlemen. you know, they are just victims. So, for instance, you can have a whole busload of children are carried away somewhere to go and work and forced in. It's the co-trafficker that gets all the monies, and they're just giving peanuts. And sometimes they're not even giving those peanuts until after 3 years. Your child may be there for a year, 2, 3 years, you will not hear from the child, and then you get peanuts. I don't think that is worth it. I think human life is precious, and we should value that.
Well, quite an interesting conversation with you, Honorable Benila. Before I even let you go at this moment, the child labor is not just happening just in Nigeria. No. It has become like a reoccurring phenomenon and a common decimal factor. Even Africa, where people are trying to escape the whole poverty scenario, Nigeria right now is almost been debased below the poverty line as stipulated by the World Bank. When you look at all of these scenarios, most parents will tell you that I want my child to even go out of the country, in not even looking at the various scenario that plays out outside the country, which you've rightly mentioned. But they'll say, I want my child to be out of the country in order to make ends meet, like most Nigerians have demonstrated, even on social platforms. Because when they go out, you see, in a space of 6 months, 3 months, they begin to send money back home. And all of this. That's why most parents will even say, okay, let them even go out at this point. Some parents even have to sell their lands, their properties, even their own costumes in order for these children to be able to make ends meet. When you look at all of these antecedents and the child labor in generality, especially within the African circumference, do you think at this point that we should be able to talk to the parents, or we should talk to the government, or we should just allow this whole trajectory to play out and allow children to succeed in peace in order to make ends meet, going by the reoccurring poverty?
It's not an option that we should consider. I think first there has to be cooperation, has to be synergy between government and citizens. There has to be a lot of awareness that, for instance, we need to build our own country. We can't be running away to foreign lands. Today, the United States is not so receptive to immigrants anymore. One day, you don't know, those same legal workers may be thrown out of those Arab Emirates that a lot of us run to. Nigeria was way ahead of them. Even our currency was stronger than theirs. They came to Nigeria to borrow money. But we have not built our nation to